The Boston 12 comes from a long line of excellent training and racing shoes, but the last two versions have been a major disappointment to say the least. However, the question now is, does the Boston 12 redeem the Adidas Adizero Boston series? Now, I'm sure you've watched a bunch of videos about this shoe, and a lot has been said about this shoe. But from a specs and features standpoint, I think there's a few things worth mentioning that really tell the story of this shoe. Starting with the specs of this shoe, we have 38 millifoam in the heel, 31 millifoam in the forefoot, giving you a 7 mil drop. Now, sometimes you'll see that drop quoted at 6.5 mil. You're never going to feel that difference. But what I will say is this is a very stiff shoe. Lightstrike Pro and Lightstrike 2.0 are foams that you do not sink into. They always feel like you're on top of them. And this shoe definitely feels that way. You feel like you're up on a tall platform, which is similar to the Adidas Pro 3, but this is not a shoe that you sink into. And honestly, it works really well for this shoe. Coming in at 9.1 ounces or 258 grams in the standard reference US men's size 9, which happens to be my size 2, puts this shoe very much in the trainer category. This is a trainer that you can race in, but it's not intended as a race shoe. It is very much a trainer. And at that weight, it's sort of right where all the other shoes of this style are. Though I will say, because this is such a nimble shoe, and it is a very aggressive shoe, it never really feels heavy in the foot. So that 9.1 ounces or 258 grams, you just don't feel it when you're running in this shoe. Starting at the upper on this shoe, I actually think it's quite a good upper. It is definitely directly in between the Cellar Mesh and Mesh uppers of the Adidas Pro 3 and Adidas 8, and then that softer, more plush upper used on the Adizero SL. It's definitely directly between those two, a little bit closer to the mesh uppers of the Adidas Pro and the Adios, but overall it's a very good training upper. Now, when you first get this shoe out of the box, it is a very stiff platform. The midsole's stiff, the upper's stiff, everything about this shoe is very stiff. But it does break in after 40 or 50K. So my first 2 or 3 runs in this shoe, I did have to lace the shoe up, stand up, sort of move around, sit back down, relace it, and then it was fine. I never had to relace the shoe during a run. But once the upper softened up again after that 40 or 50K mark, and that was a couple washes, 50K of running, I never had any issue from there. The upper really conforms to the foot, and for a training upper that is fairly lightweight, I think it fits the shoe really well. Now, like every other Adizero shoe, this has that awful kind of felt tongue, and like the Adidas Pro 3, this is not gusseted, so it does just flop around in here. Though this tongue does have a little bit of padding on it, unlike the Adidas Pro 3. Same horrible Adidas laces, but again, the tongue and the laces, I'm not really going to fault this shoe because that's across every Adizero shoe. So they're no different here, and honestly, they're the least annoying in this shoe of all the other Adizero shoes. The heel counter is the same as all the other Adizero shoes, meaning there's very little padding in here. There's that felt-like material. There's the 2 pads on the sides of the Achilles, but nothing back here. Basically, if you don't have any problem with heel rubbing or heel lift in other Adizero shoes, you're not going to have any issue with this shoe. Moving on to the fit of this shoe, I went true to size. Now, I'm a US men's size 9, though my foot is somewhere between a size 9 and a size 8.5. Though it's closer to a 9. So going true to size in this shoe gave me a very generous training fit. Now, if I was going to race in this shoe or I wanted a race fit, which I don't want in either case, I would likely go down half a size, and that would give me that true race fit and a much tighter fit overall. Now, the last of the shoe, I believe, is the same last used for the Adidas 8 and the Adidas Pro 3, meaning it's got a fairly generous width forefoot, especially for an Adidas shoe, but it is a little bit longer, and I think a lot of that has to do with the toe bumper in this shoe being much higher in volume, and it actually is a lot more vertical to the front of the shoe, which gives the illusion that I think this shoe is longer. Bottom line is it's a very generous fit in the forefoot, and if you want that tighter race fit, go down a half a size. Though I would recommend, if you're going to use this for training, stick to your normal size because you're going to have that more generous upper that's going to give you that better training fit that's going to give you a lot more versatility for the type of running you can do in this shoe. The geometry of the shoe is very interesting. It feels very aggressive and very lively to me, but I actually think it has the same geometry as the Adios Pro 3, but it feels much more like the Evo 1 to me. Now, I've not run in the Evo 1, but I have had it on my foot now, and I'm familiar with how the Evo 1 feels falling over the toe, how that toe off feels in that shoe. And this shoe feels much closer to that than the Adios Pro 3. Now, I think that's a combination of the midsole construction, the foam layup, the rods in this shoe. I'll get to that in the ride. But this is a very nimble, very lively shoe that I would say runs more aggressively than the Adios Pro 3. Something I find quite interesting in the midsole of this shoe is this little black band right here. What this is a little wing that's coming off the pinky toe rod in the rods of this shoe. And it's giving the shoe some lateral stability, which this is the only Adizero shoe that has a wing coming off the rods anywhere. But I find it very interesting. I think we're going to see this kind of technology across more Adizero shoes moving forward, especially as Adidas moves to the new Lightstrike Pro Evo foam, the new PIBA foam that we saw in the Evo 1, because this is giving some stability, and I'll talk about how it feels during the ride section of this video. The midsole is made up of two foams. The colored foam here, the cream and the heel, is Lightstrike Pro, the Lightstrike Pro we all know and love. And then the lighter white foam is actually Lightstrike 2.0 foam. So we saw this configuration in the Adios 8 as well last year. Now, there is a lot of Lightstrike Pro in this shoe, and you feel it depending on how your foot strike actually works. But it is muted by this Lightstrike 2.0 foam. And in the forefoot of the shoe, what you're actually running on, what you're actually toeing off on, is Lightstrike 2.0 foam. This white foam under the Lightstrike Pro does mute the Lightstrike Pro foam a little bit, but for a training shoe, I think it actually works really well because it gives the shoe a little bit more stability and it gives it a little bit more durability and takes the edge off of the Lightstrike Pro, which is a very high resiliency foam, means the rebound of Lightstrike Pro is very high. So if you've ever run in the Adios Pro 3 and you're not hitting a very clean foot strike, that shoe just feels like it wants to spring every direction. By putting Lightstrike 2.0 foam closer to the ground where you're actually landing on it, it just smooths all that out. So this is a much more controllable training shoe, and it works very well. The last thing I need to mention is this beautiful outsole. I love the outsole on this shoe so much. I thought the outsole on this shoe, the Adios 8, was perfect, and it's very good. But this one's better. This outsole is probably the best outsole that I ran in the past 6 months. It is absolutely outstanding. The Continental rubber, which we know is good, we know is durable, is absolutely outstanding. The grid pattern or the tread pattern on this shoe works really well, but it's very minimal, but it does its job. The coverage in the heel is great. It's just an outstandingly durable and versatile outsole. And Adidas, hands down, has the best outsoles in all of running right now, especially with the Continental rubber Adizero shoes. Let's talk about the ride of the shoe and some of those technologies I just mentioned. Now, this shoe is a little perplexing to me in that depending on what your foot strike is in this shoe, you're going to have a very different experience. And I don't think I've run in a shoe that has such a drastically different experience based on foot strike to this one in a long time. Now, if you are a heel striker, this shoe has a generous lateral heel bevel. It's going to smooth that strike down. It's going to capture your foot. It's going to roll it into the midfoot. That's where this lateral wing coming off the rods is going to try to center your foot, and then it's going to roll your foot off of the toe. The Lightstrike Pro foam, which is the majority of it is in the forefoot of the shoe, is going to engage slightly, and you're going to feel a tiny bit of rebound coming off of the toe off. But generally, for a heel striker, this shoe just feels very rolly. Honestly, it feels a lot like a lot of other shoes out there in the trainer category. For a midfoot striker, that's where this little midfoot lateral wing is going to really come into effect. If you are landing flat and you're supinating, which is normal, this little wing is going to try to quickly move your foot into the center so you can engage the forefoot and toe off. But that could be really annoying for some people. So it's something that could be a bit of an acquired taste for midfoot strikers. But the other thing this wing is doing is making up for what is relatively a narrow midfoot and heel. There's definitely more narrow shoes in the midfoot and heel, but this wing is giving some stability in the midfoot, and it really is trying to center your foot on that strike to really engage the forefoot of the shoe, which is where the magic is in the shoe. I think it works really well, but it could be annoying for some heavy midfoot strikers, especially if you're not used to the shoe quickly rolling to the center. Now to the forefoot strike. A lot of people have commented that the recent Adizero shoes are really tuned for forefoot strikers. As a forefoot striker, I'm going to say I kind of agree with that. And this shoe is absolutely magical with a forefoot strike. Now, when I'm up on my toes and I'm hitting a very crisp, clean forefoot strike, meaning I'm landing up here, I'm really engaging this big chunk of Light Strike Pro, putting a ton of energy into that foam, into the ground. Light Strike Pro being such a high resiliency foam means the rebound is very quick, very spring-like. So if I'm putting a lot of energy into that, I'm up here on the toe, this shoe just springs out, rolls forward extremely quick. In fact, my first couple runs in this shoe, especially when I was getting up to 10K, even 5K pace, really kind of took me off guard because this shoe was so fast off the toe. I could feel myself loading this big, beautiful chunk of Light Strike Pro in this shoe and really rolling forward. And this is why I say this shoe feels more aggressive than it really is. I think the geometry in this shoe, even if it is closer to the Adidas Pro 3, this shoe to me probably runs much more like an Evo 1 because it is so aggressive because of all of this Light Strike Pro up here. But this lateral wing, if I am getting a little bit further back, still forefoot striking, maybe a little bit more midfoot striking, this lateral wing will actually remind me, will tell me very clearly that I'm not up on my toes how I could be. So as a training tool, this shoe is great because it encourages me to stay on my toes. And again, as a forefoot striker, I love that. I love that in a training tool. And this is an exceptional training tool. But the question you're probably wondering, and I alluded to this in my History of the Boston series, is this worthy of the Boston name? Is this a Boston? My answer in that video was yes, this is a Boston, but. And the but is, running shoes are so specialized now in 2024 that I don't know if the versatility of the classic Bostons, especially the Boost Bostons, is still viable. Because we have so many good specialized shoes now, especially race shoes. Now, this is a very competent training shoe, and I think it works brilliantly as a training shoe. And I've done pretty much everything in this shoe, from easy running through 5K and threshold running, a lot of marathon pace, a lot of half marathon pace, fartleks, long sessions. I've done everything in this shoe. I've even done trail running in this shoe, and it's performed really well. But I'm still coming down to, would I race in this shoe? And compared to, say, the Adidas Pro 3 or a Vaporfly 3, I would always pick those over this shoe. I wouldn't race in this shoe. Older Bostons, I would seriously consider racing in, especially pre-Super Shoe era. I just wouldn't do that in this shoe. But again, this is where I'm saying, this is a Boston. This is a training tool. It is an exceptional training shoe. And I know why a lot of people loved this shoe last year. But is a Boston still a Boston? Is a Boston sort of the one shoe to do everything in? And I'm going to say that while this shoe can do that, you're going to find better specialist shoes in other places. So that brings me into really 3, 4 maybe use cases for this shoe. And the first one is really around, this is the one shoe for you to do everything in. Now, this shoe fell into the super trainer category last year, and those shoes were marketed as train in a plated shoe 100% of the time and then go race in it as well. You're not going to convince me that training 100% of the time in a plated shoe is a good idea. You're just not. I'm sorry. I don't subscribe to that. But if you have to train in a plated shoe 100% of the time, This shoe or an Adidas shoe is probably going to be your best bet because of the rods. The rods give you the stiffness along the length of the shoe off of the toe. Now, this doesn't have carbon rods, it has glass fiber rods, but they're still very stiff. So you're getting the benefit of toe off of rods. But because the rods are all independent, think of fingers, this shoe does have a lot of torsional flex, and across the forefoot of the shoe, you do get some flex side to side. Each one of the rods functions or flexes independently. So if you must train in a plated shoe 100% of the time, or you want one super trainer to do everything, this is going to be your best bet. And that, to me, would be the first use case of that. Though, I'm never going to fully recommend that. The second use case for this shoe really would be pairing it with a good, flexible, non-plated daily trainer. There are a ton of great options out there for flexible, non-plated trainers. I'm not going to list them. Whatever one you like, whether it's low stack, max stack, whatever it is, pairing it with this shoe is going to cover all of your training bases. That flexible, non-plated daily trainer plus this shoe, which is stiff, aggressive, and fast, everything is covered. And for newer runners who just are getting into training, structured training, or even racing, and are not ready to step all the way up to a carbon-plated super shoe, this is a great option. Paired with that daily trainer, you've got all your bases covered. You can train and race with both of those shoes. It is probably the best combination and the best pairing for this shoe. A good, neutral, flexible, non-plated daily trainer. Now, if you race in this shoe, the Adios Pro 3, and the upper doesn't destroy the top of your foot like it does for a lot of us, myself included, I'm going to assume this is a very comfortable shoe for you, which means you can do all your racing and training in this shoe. Therefore, this shoe is going to be the better shoe to be training and racing in than this shoe. You don't need this shoe if you have this shoe. There is nothing that this shoe doesn't do better than this shoe. This is stiffer, faster. You have full Light Strike Pro. This is the better shoe, and if it fits your foot, it's comfortable to run in, you just don't need this shoe. And if you want a pairing for this shoe, I would actually recommend the Adios 8. This, I think, is the training pairing. This is the stiff, high stack, super shoe. This is the low stack, flexible training companion that has very similar last, so the fit of these shoes are very similar. These two shoes, I think, work much better together. So if you race in this shoe and it doesn't destroy your top of your foot, this is the shoe you want to pair it with. You don't need the Boston 12. If you are lucky enough to be racing in the Evo 1, do you need this shoe? Well, I'm going to say that this shoe is probably the ideal training companion to the current Evo 1, because this shoe to my foot feels very similar to what I experience rolling off the toe in the Evo 1. Again, I've not run in the Evo 1, but I have had on my foot, I have rolled off the toe in that shoe. This is very similar. But more importantly, you're never going to be training a lot in the Evo 1 in the current form because the foam is just too delicate for that. You want to save it for race day, but you want a shoe that has a very similar feel for training. And this shoe has a very, very similar feel to the Evo 1. So I would highly recommend this as your training companion to the Evo 1. Put in a flexible, non-plated daily trainer in there, those three shoes, you've got everything covered. This is going to cover all of those bases. And when you go from this shoe to the Evo 1, or even a Vaporfly 3, it's going to feel very natural because the nimbleness, the aggressiveness of this shoe is going to feel very at home in the Evo 1 or Vaporfly 3. So that would be the other primary rotation or use case that I would recommend this shoe for. As you can see, I'm a big fan of the Boston 12. Part of me is a little bummed that I waited 6 months to pick it up, but if I would have bought the shoe last June and run in it, I probably wouldn't have enjoyed it as much because last summer I didn't need a shoe like the Boston 12. But now, in February of 2024, I'm not training for anything in particular, so I don't need to be running in a super shoe right now, but I still want to be doing fast running. I want a trainer that will allow me to do fast running, go through the gears. And the Boston 12 has been outstanding for that. It's been the perfect shoe for what I wanted right now. So that's why I'm glad I waited, and I'm very excited that I've fallen in love with it as much as I have. Now, I've been thinking about what the next Boston will be, the Boston 13. And until a couple weeks ago, I was just expecting the Boston 13 to be an upper refresh on the same midsole, same outsole. And frankly, that would have been a great shoe. And that may be what we get. But we have seen leaks for pretty much all the other Adizero shoes in 2024, except for the Adios Pro 4 or 5, whatever the next one is, and the Boston 13. The leaks we have seen, though, have been completely new shoes. The Adios 9, the Adizero SL2, even the Ultra Boost Light, they all got complete new refreshes. They're totally new shoes. I know the Adios Pro 4 or 5, whatever the next version is going to be a substantial redesign. And that's making me think that the Boston 13 is also going to be a substantial redesign to be the training companion to the Adios Pro 4 or 5, whatever the next number is, and the Evo 1. And that's exciting. I am a bit apprehensive because I'm still a little gun shy of what they did with the Boston 10 and 11, and the Boston 12 has been very good, but Adidas has been on a roll lately, and I'm excited about the 2024 model, so I'm very excited to see what we get if we get a brand new Boston 13, and if we do, I'm sure it's going to be very exciting. Thank you for making it to the end of the video. If you like this type of content, consider subscribing. You'll see more content from me pop up in your feed. If not, drop a like on this video because it helps this channel continue to grow, which I always appreciate. And with that, I'll catch you in the next one.